All righty. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello,
Hey, good
everybody.
morning. Like good evening in your in your time zone.
It's always evening somewhere. Yeah, it's actually evening. It's morning now technically. Yeah. Hey, does that
That's good.
change? Like, what do you if you said to somebody in German, good morning, can you say that
Yeah.
at 12:01 a.m.?
No, I think like my credo is if you haven't slept, it's not morning.
Okay.
So
That's
it's
fair.
still night until you sleep and then it gets morning. So if you go
Okay,
to
but what if
sleep
I
at
sleep
like
at
7 a.m. and then sleep until like 1 p.m., then it's in morning in the 1 p.m.
you
Like
you're gonna go straight to
everything is
afternoon?
relative.
Yeah. Okay, well that's awesome. Well, anyway, yeah, good evening. I don't know. Good morning to you. Good evening for me.
Yeah,
Last time we spoke was a couple of years ago on this very
right.
show. You and I were in beautiful Barcelona, which
Yeah.
is, listen, audience, don't cry for us, okay? I can see people in the chat just so sad that we had to spend time in beautiful Barcelona. Yeah, no. No, I definitely enjoyed that. I remember it like it was yesterday, and I was thinking, well, it is yesterday, and then I looked at the calendar. I'm like, oh no, it's been 2 years
Yes.
actually,
Yeah, it was
or
Spring IO 2 years ago.
yeah, almost 2 years ago. That's the new one is in a few months, right? So the next one,
Yes.
Spring IO in
Yep.
Barcelona. By the way, register for that now, people. That'll be fun.
Yeah, it's a great
Anyway,
conference. It's one of the
great.
best spring conferences in Europe.
Yeah, it's I don't think there's anybody on the team who doesn't love that
Yep,
event.
absolutely.
Anybody's ever been. So anyway, that'll be good. And I was excited. I'm excited. I hope to see you there. I hope I get to go. I mean, it'll be awesome.
Fingers
Uh,
crossed.
but in the meantime, I figured I'd really like to talk to you again because you keep. I keep saying to myself, wouldn't it be nice if? And then I check with you, and it's already there. It's already there. I want something on the Initializr, and it's already there all the time. And so you work on the Spring Boot team, right? That's
Right.
fair. And then
Yep.
in addition to that, um, because you don't already have way too much work, you're already doing way too much. In addition to that, you also work on the Spring Initializer, which is
Right.
the gateway, right? Like,
Yep.
what is? Can you tell us about yourself first of all? Like, what is your what do you do on the Spring team? I guess and then
Yep.
what's your
So
title? That kind of stuff.
I joined in February 2022, and then I joined the Spring Boot team.
You're out of focus.
I hate this camera. Should be come back right now. Okay, I'm
Oh,
back.
there you go.
And I joined the Spring Boot team. I was initially recruited to work on this whole Spring Native stuff, but then we decided to essentially to not have a separate Spring Native project, but integrate it in all the other portfolio projects. And that's when
Right.
the Spring Native team was no longer there, and I got moved into the Spring Boot team, which was very very great. So I worked on Spring Boot for a time. Yep.
Spring Native wasn't there because we merged the AOT
Right.
stuff. The native stuff, it became the Spring AOT stuff inside of Spring Framework and
Right.
Spring Boot,
Yes.
right? It was,
It moved into all the portfolio projects. So we,
yeah,
we did not disband this whole work, but we moved it in every in every team. And
integrated,
that's
yeah.
why this dedicated Spring Native team was no longer there. And I moved
Yeah.
into the Spring Boot team, and then I worked on Boot.
Oh,
And
that's interesting, actually. Wait, I didn't even think about that. Are you the only guy or gal that was on the Spring Native team before? Because everybody else I can think of was on either Spring Boot or Spring Framework, and then they
yeah,
went off to do the Spring Native stuff, and then they reintegrated with those projects or
right.
worked in tandem with those projects. So you joined specifically for the native
Yes.
stuff, the native effort.
Yep.
Oh
Yep.
wow!
So Sebastian Deleuze did lead the Spring Native team,
Yeah,
this experimental project, and then they started explicitly recruiting for Spring Native, and that's where I applied for.
lucky
And
us.
so the idea was until I don't know, I think the first day of starting or so, that I start in the Spring Native team. And then they said to me, well, there's no Spring Native team anymore. You're now in the Spring Boot team.
Oh well,
but
cry. Yeah.
But this felt like if you fly economy class and then you go to the ticket counter and they say we have no more place in the economy class, we have to upgrade you to business class. So that's how it felt. It's more like yay, I'm now working on Spring Boot, which is even more awesome.
Well, yes, but also it feels more like they're like, to me it's more like, well, you don't have any more seats in economy. We'd like you to fly the plane. Like it's work.
Yeah, okay.
It's a
Yeah.
lot of pressure.
So that's when I started in the boot team, but I still did all the native stuff. Like I worked primarily on the native stuff, but when that was done, it's never done. I worked on other stuff too.
The native stuff is one of my favorite things. I love the native stuff. Can you talk about that? Do we have anything new coming there? I mean, what's our for people who don't know, in Spring Framework 6 and Spring Boot 3, both of which came out in November of 2022, we released new support for AOT, ahead of time compilation, which is for right now, it means GraalVM, right? But the abstraction and the engine that supports that work, in theory, offers benefits. Actually, it's not in theory. It does offer benefits in places like AppCDS and so on. But it was, at the time, it was very much interchangeably referring to GraalVM. And that work is a whole component model. People may not realize this, but Spring now exists at compilation, which is, blows my mind. And because it exists at compilation time, it can actually contribute to the output of the compilation unit. You can actually contribute Java code. People don't know that code generation exists in Spring Boot, and also it can contribute configuration for artifacts like, for example, GraalVM, which needs JSON configuration files. So that effort was a huge integration. It was, it's a testament to how good Spring is at the machinery that was all there. The abstraction, the Bean Factory concept, all that stuff was all basically there. But once you've built that engine, everybody now needs to make sure that we use that engine for all of our various projects to make GraalVM work for, Spring Data, Spring Security, Spring Integration, Spring Batch, whatever,
Right.
And so that's, I think, what you mean when you say it's never done, because there's always new stuff being added to Spring Data, Spring Integration, Spring Batch, Spring whatever, right? So, yeah. What's the?
So we have a big test suite which tests all this native stuff with Spring Security, Spring Data, the smoke test, the AOT smoke test, right? And when we update dependencies in Boot, for example, a new Flyway version or whatever, you have to make sure that it also works. So we are a big contributor to this whole GraalVM reachability repo, where essentially it has like reflect configs and stuff, so that third-party libraries also work. Because most of the libraries don't ship the natives, the native hints in themselves, but we have to externally contribute them. And of course, we have to make sure that that stuff works. So that's why I said it's never stops, because we upgraded the dependency. Sometimes our small text broke. We fix the reachability metadata and it starts working again.
Why don't more? This is one thing I understand why at the time a lot of third-party projects weren't maintaining it, but that was 3 years ago. Why aren't more people? Yep. I feel like more projects should be like, okay, yeah, we'll do this. Why not? It's just especially for the libraries where it's just a static thing. If you have a component model, okay, fine, that is different. But if you're just a library, just version control the config files,
Yeah, it's not that hard. I think it's the initial hurdle to get over it, and then it would be fine, because you can just run it in CI. Like the GraalVM team supports like GitHub Actions, for example, which we use.
Yeah.
It just installs a GraalVM distribution, and then you can run your tests in native mode and just use stuff breaking. But yeah, that's how it is. My hope is that this will be moved into the libraries, because then I have to do less work and can do more other stuff. But yeah, we'll see.
It's a Herculean effort, but most of it was done, 2022. The core effort of making your average Spring app, or at least 80% of your average, whatever your definition of average is, work, that has been real for years now. But of course, there's always like, some the framework this library here does something goofy with reflection, and they add this new library, this new class, and okay, we forgot to add that, or whatever. Usually it's pretty trivial. And in fact, GraalVM nowadays even tells you a lot of times, looks like you're trying to do reflection on this class. Did you remember to register a hint? So it's pretty straightforward, but it's just work. It's work that falls at your feet a lot of times.
Right.
I really appreciate it, by the way.
Thank you. And we have this whole AOT stuff you already explained. We use that now for the whole app CDS and make startup faster stuff, like Project Layden, and it all builds. Like Layden works without the AOT stuff, but if you enable like AOT compilation, not the native stuff, only like the AOT model in Spring, then it's crazy how much performance you get on startup.
It's really good, and it's I quite like the resulting code as well. I can reason by looking at the source code.
Yeah, it generates source code and not bytecode. You can just look at it, and it essentially takes your bean factory and rewrites it into a source code, which you can then read. Yeah, in a functional registration essentially, and then you can read it. You can even debug it. You can put breakpoints in it, run it, debug it.
That's that's the thing, isn't it? Right? Because while this effort started off as a native image thing, you can take the generated source code and run it on the JRE.
Yes,
and deploy it, in fact, and you get performance benefits just by doing that.
Right.
Do you think it will ever switch to that as the default, and then the existing default is the opt-in?
Not sure, because there are certain trade-offs being made, like for example dynamic beans and stuff. So if you profiles, like if a bean is on conditional or something, essentially the AOT it builds it, and at build time the beans are fixed. Maybe we can add more dynamic in the AOT engine, but right now it's this trade-off. You have to essentially build the context at build time, and then it starts fast. And if you want like dynamic stuff at runtime, like change beans depending on profiles and stuff like that, you need to use not the AOT, but the regular one. And I think like the regular one will be the default for a long time, because I think it will just break too much stuff if we would switch that. And I mean, we strive to not break stuff.
That's true. Yeah, well, I wish more people. So I have a big app, right, that I maintain. That's a suite of tools I use for my just everything. And it's Spring Boot 3.4. It's a GraalVM. It's GraphQL. It's got Spring Modular. It's got Spring Data, Spring Securities, the OAuth stuff. Spring Integration. I'm using Kafka. I'm using Spring Data JDBC. I'm using just all the stuff. All the
your goal was to include like every project in it.
No, but it's a real sort of what I expect most people are building, and so it works just fine. I have a few hints that I've registered for like Apache Lucene, this kind of thing. But it's you just get to you write your config for your beans, and then as you test the code in GraalVM, in the same place as your config, I register a runtime hints registrar, and that's it. And it just lives right alongside it. It's very easy to understand. Oh, okay, I've got this bean. I'm using these hints.
Right.
It's just so natural, and it's not it doesn't. It's very little bit. It's very little work. As I add a library, I test to make sure it works in GraalVM. And if it doesn't, I add this one little class, and it's usually a nested class. Even it's not even public. It doesn't even sit in my namespace and polluting it. It's just it's so easy to keep. And this won't make any sense to anybody not using freedom units, but my father used to say it's a cinch by the inch, hard by the yard, right? Like if you're doing work and you maintain the work and you do as you go, it's easy. But if you wait until it's accreted, then you get this overwhelming, insurmountable amount of work.
Yeah, that's the problem with tech debt, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like you should tackle it right now and not like wait 4 years and then you got a really big problem.
No, yeah. So I love the GraalVM stuff. I think people are scared because they're thinking it's going to be this insurmountable thing. It's not. Just 90% of it probably already works. Just try it out, and then the rest is just okay. Well, do that or this or whatever. Anyway, good stuff.
It's like with most technology, right? Like if you take a look at it and stab it and inspect it, you will see that this is not like magic. It's
Right.
It's built on the same foundations you build your software on. You just need to take the time and understand it.
Yeah, and that's yes. This and the fact that we have a programming model at compilation. Oh, it's worth
Yeah.
learning about this just because it opens up the possibilities. Even if you're just doing JRE stuff, it's I mean, I love this stuff. I love it.
It was really cool to see to fold the let all the pieces fall into places when we started the CDS stuff, and we could just
Yeah.
reuse the AOT engine. That was really cool to see.
Huge. I did a video, and so for people who don't know, App CDS is a feature introduced in Java 11. In Spring Boot 3.2, we added support for.
I think so.
We already supported it kind of, but we made it much more optimized thanks to the support of layers and stuff like this in 3.2, Spring Boot 3.2, about a year and a few months ago. And you can take a regular JRE app, forget about GraalVM, because GraalVM, like I said, you require this config and it requires this component model, these concessions that you might have to make. It's not that big a deal, but it is still something you might have to do. But with App CDS, it's just any modern JDK, JRE, just regular Java, nothing special at all. Just take that code and you get much better startup time. It's freaking magic, and you can change. You can do a few incantations in the command line to have it create the index, which you then feed into the runtime when you run the program, and it's just much better. It just works. You can script it. That's how good it is. No human intellect required. And
it's get better in every like Java release. Like every Java release adds something to the CDS stuff. Like with Project Layden, they are working on so much stuff. Like for example, taking compiled code and writing it into cache files essentially, so that your JVM is hot when you start it and stuff like that.
Class files?
Like the compiled code which a JIT would produce and then store it on disk and then just reload it so the JVM is instantly hot, like as if you have run it, and this is just great. Of course, you need to do a training run and
reach the JIT
and reach the code paths, but then it's being compiled and then the compiled code is stored into files, and this could be just like memory mapped back again, and then the JVM is hot if you start it right off the box. No warm-up phases and stuff. Yeah, that's really cool.
That's so cool. So you mentioned Layden. This is an umbrella project.
Yeah.
It subsumes it. It's bigger than App CDS, right? App CDS is now part of that, but it's just one of many tranches of support.
Like they are currently renaming this whole CDS stuff, so don't memorize CDS because it's going to be renamed into. I think it's AOT cache is the new word, but it's not final yet. Some of those are like in the newer JDKs, like JDK 24, I think, has more stuff in it. But for example, this -- AOT cache and stuff. Yeah. But
so cool.
The compiled code stuff, which I was talking about, is still in prototype phase. I think it's not production ready yet, but it's still very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's one of those things that GraalVM has been able to do. You get instant on performance, right?
Yeah.
But actually, wait, the one criticism people have tried to lay at the feet of GraalVM is that, I mean, it's a feature and a bug, right? The feature is that when you get GraalVM performance, it goes as fast as it can go instantly. Yep. That's great, right? You get instantly native performance, but it's never going to get better, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you run a program that you compiled in Java 1 on Java 1.0, and then take that same program and then run it on Java 21 or 23.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
It'll run much faster, even though you didn't recompile the code, right? With GraalVM, that's no longer true. The performance you have on the same hardware is the same. It'll never get faster or slower. It's just, whereas with Java, in theory, I could keep the same computer and upgrade my Java, and maybe the code will get faster. So you're saying, would my AOT Layden stuff, even if I had this code caching, this native code compilation caching, would it still read JIT to take advantage of
That's a very good question. I have no idea what happens if you write out the code generated by a JIT which was in Java 24 and then you started with Java 40. If
Yeah,
it
exactly.
then just re-invalidates the code, I have no idea if it invalidates. But I don't think this
But they
works
could.
because normally like the cache files need to match the JRE or JVM which produces
Oh,
them.
okay.
So I think that doesn't work. It just invalidates the whole cache and starts like
Okay, so
it pretends that the cache is never there. But that would be a interesting question, actually.
at least it's within the realm of possibility. Whereas with GraalVM, it's not. You know,
Yeah,
what you
but
get is what you get.
Yeah, but this argument is a bit flawed because you could just get the class files and recompile it with a recent GraalVM version, and then you get a faster
Oh, totally.
stuff
Oh,
too.
yeah,
So
yeah. That's what I'm saying. I'm using GraalVM, a big fan, but yeah. So that's great. That's okay. That Java 24 is coming out in a month, next month.
yes,
Not even a month. It's like the 15th or something like that, right?
Yep.
Java 24 release date.
Yeah, it's in March.
March
So
18th. Yeah,
yep,
it's a month.
We already built Spring Boot against it. We have a CI pipeline running on against 24 to see if stuff breaks.
Okay, of course you do. I love the Spring Boot team. They are my smoke test for Java itself.
I think we're the smoke test of a lot of projects.
Yeah, this is the huge value, right? Like there's a dozen different libraries besides what Spring uses, besides what Spring provides. You know, a dozen very big projects that if it doesn't work in Spring Boot, I don't use it. You know, because
we have a ton of integration tests. If you run them all, like we have tests running all this stuff in Docker where we start up Cassandra and test against and stuff like that. I think if you run the whole test suite, it runs in one and a half hours or something like that. And that's on a really powerful machine.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's a long time, but it's still very good. Is that all test containers now?
Yes, yes. Like all the Docker stuff is test containers. We have some Docker Compose tests which actually start Docker Compose.
Oh, sure, but it's Docker. I mean, isn't that amazing?
But it's everything Dockerized, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's like I'm old enough to remember you know, we had to just run the thing on a computer or run a shared integration environment, and then eventually we had virtual machines and now
I remember too.
Yeah, amazing. So let's talk about that. You're integrating, and the reason you're integrating is because you're moving quickly and you want to make sure that you're not breaking things. And one of the places you are all moving very quickly to, having just released Spring Boot 3.4 in November, is Spring Boot 3.5. Is that coming?
Yes, Spring Boot 3.5 is released in May, I think 22nd or so, right when Spring I/O hits. So when Spring I/O is over the release date of Spring Boot 3.5.
Oh, that's gonna be stressful. Y'all should like try and get it out like a week after Spring I/O or something, or maybe a week before. You know.
Whatever. Yeah, we're always talking about moving that stuff because the November releases usually hit Thanksgiving, which is a big thing for the US side. So yeah, right.
Yeah. I do videos on this stuff, and so it comes out the day I'm sitting at the dinner table. You know.
Yeah.
Like I like to have start.
Like the Spring Boot releases are really badly timed in that regard. The first one is in Spring I/O, and the other one is happening in Thanksgiving.
Well, having things on the date is really nice because I'll never ever forget when Spring Boot 1.0 came out. Right, April 1, 2014. April Fools.
Before my time. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but April Fools, like, that was an amazing release. So, what's coming in 3.5? I mean, 3.4. Well, actually, wait. Let's talk about 3.4 for a second. 3.4 came out. You've got, well, what do you have? There's in 3.4. I mean, it's been so long. Actually, it's been 3 months.
Yeah, I just opened up the release notes because I can't remember anymore.
Yeah, so much new stuff.
Oh yeah, Phil refactored this whole REST client and REST template stuff, so you can.
All right.
So you can now choose which essentially which library underneath you want to use it, because it before that it was hard coded to use always HTTP components if it's on the class path. If it's not there, it uses I don't know HTTP whatever, and now you can essentially choose, which gave more flexibility, which was cool.
Right. Oh yeah. Okay, I see that. The request factories. You've got auto configure test database, dynamic properties. Oh yeah, the dynamic property registrar interface.
Yeah.
You know, you've got HTML. You've got all the dependency upgrades. You've got Netty and native images. I'm not sure. Did that get fixed? There was a
Yes, this get fixed. That was fixed. Yeah.
okay.
We got
3.4 and later,
we
3.4
enabled
to 1.
graceful shutdown by default.
Nice.
One which you will like is we changed to another cloud native build pack builder, and this also has support for ARM, for Mac ones and stuff.
Right. Apple Silicon. Although I did, I discovered a bug.
Apples.
I'm not the first person to discover it. It's if you're using Apple M4, Apple Silicon M4, the new one, plus build packs and GraalVM, it does not work.
Oh, okay.
Right. And it's and Java 21. If you're using Java 17, it works. And if you use Java 24, it works.
Okay.
24 is fixed. It's already fixed. It's not a Spring problem, it's a Java problem, right? But anyway, another reason for everybody to be jumping up to Java 24 next month. It's gonna be awesome. Or don't buy Apple Silicon M4 or something. I don't know.
I mean, those are awesome. Those are awesome machines, right?
Yeah. I can run Slack and Chrome.
Yeah, wow.
At the same time.
You got like 128 gigs of RAM.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's not really enough, but yeah, I can do that. Yeah. It's slow, but it works.
Crazy. Yeah.
I can run. I mean, 128 gigs makes me feel so spoiled. Like 128 gigs. I've had servers, many servers in my life that were much smaller than this. Not just cloud native stuff. I mean, the old days when we had big, racked and stacked and monolithic servers. That would have been a very, very expensive rack from Sun 20 years ago. Okay. Anyway, so 3.4, amazing release, big release. But here we are, 2025. 3.5 is coming out, and then later this year, 4.0. So I guess I can tell you one thing that people should be looking out for is deprecations. This is super important. Upgrade to 3.5. Figure out which deprecated and fix it, because it's going to be gone in 4, right? Is that fair? Okay.
Is it gone in 4?
I don't know. It feels like it should, but I could be wrong.
Normally, we deprecate it in one version and then remove it in the version afterwards. So if you deprecate something in 3.3, it's there in 3.4.
Oh.
And then we remove it in 3.5, but I'm not sure because we're jumping a major version. I have to check with people more into deprecation stuff.
I expect there's a lot of stuff that was deprecated in 3.3 at the very least that you should be paying attention to.
This will be removed in 3.5. Yeah.
And 4, definitely 4, right?
And definitely 4, yes.
So this is now more than ever. It's time to pay attention, people. This stuff is, we don't deprecate a lot, but if we do, you got to know about it.
And this is so 3.5 is the last release in the 3.x line,
right?
Because then we jumped to 4. So this is the last release which uses Spring Framework 6, because Spring Framework 7 is coming out, and Spring Boot 4 will build on Spring Framework 7.
We want you to upgrade, but did you see Michael Manila's blog the other day? Apparently, commercial support is getting.
Now we have to support it until, I don't know. It's very long time. So if you're still on 2, if you're still on 2.7 and you buy commercial support, you get it essentially like forever. I don't know, but it's very, very long.
Yeah. No. Anyway, so we have 3.5. What's coming in 3.5?
3.5. So right now we have, you can, if you're using the Spring Boot configuration processor, which is like this annotation processor which you put in your project, which generates metadata about your configuration properties, you can now ignore some of them. Before that, you couldn't like ignore properties. Like say, for example, you're using a bean method and you put add configuration properties on it, and the type you are returning is from a third-party library, so you can't change it. What this would do is normally it inspects the class and it uses it reads all the getters and setters, and then it generates like stuff for them, even for properties which you do not want users to set, and now you can ignore them. You can mark them as ignored, and then they won't end up in the metadata file, and then IntelliJ or Eclipse won't show them, or VS Code.
Is it 7 years? That's a long time.
Yes, it's. I just looked. It's 2029.
For the new, for something new, whatever. Anyway, long time.
For 2.7.
Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. Oh wow, that's a long time. But yeah,
But I
please
guess
upgrade.
that means I can I can't remove like Java 8 from my machine anytime soon. Yeah.
Oh well.
That's the downside.
But so anyway, upgrade to 3.5. You're gonna. So that's interesting. The properties, like I can imagine. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. So if you register a bean, you can actually put in the bean method. You can say
Yeah.
at configuration properties prefix equals a.b,
Right.
and then if there's a Java bean or a record style property on the object returned from the bean method,
Right.
Spring Boot will treat it like any other configuration properties object.
Right. Yes.
And it'll generate a JSON file, which then IDEs index
Yes.
to understand how to show autocompletion for properties, right? And you're saying,
Exactly.
so do you specify the properties that are ignored as strings in the annotation for the configuration properties, or?
Oh no, you put them in this additional metadata file. So there is the Spring configuration metadata additional JSON file.
Yeah.
And there you can just put them into an ignore list, and then they are getting filtered out when we generate the JSON file.
Okay, but it's not in the component model. It lives in a JSON file. But
yes, it lives in a JSON file.
We respect the JSON file now. That's good.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So cool. This is one of those. Then we have load properties from environment variables, which was a very interesting discussion. So someone opened an issue about what they essentially wanted is they want a multi-line environment variable, which contains Java properties. And this should be imported because what they were doing is they were using Helm, like this Kubernetes thingy. And they read this. Usually, if you configure stuff in Kubernetes, you create a config map. Right? You put stuff in the config map, and then you reference this config map from your service. So now imagine you have service version 1 running, and you are preparing for service version 2. And the version 2 needs some more additional properties. What do you do now? Do you modify the existing config map? And if you restart service version 1, it breaks because you put new stuff in there? Or do you create a new config map and reference that from your new service?
Yeah.
But then you have to make sure that if every version 1 service is stopped, you have to manually remove the config map. Right? Because you have to manually garbage collect it because Helm doesn't take care of that.
All right.
And that's a problem. And yeah, it's a weird problem, but I have tried to work around that bug, and I have asked multiple people more which work more with Helm, which have more knowledge about that stuff. And they said, yeah, that's really a problem. And what we have done now is that you can now specify an environment variable, which is multi-line, which contains like the whole configuration file, and then you can just read it. And because the environment variable is not in a config map, but it's tied to the deployment in Kubernetes. So if you change the version number of your image, you at the same time change the configuration. And now they have the same life cycle, and you don't have this problem with config maps left over or conflicting config maps and stuff. I'm not sure if this is a niche problem or not, but if you're using Helm, maybe you can give that a try.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's a problem I hope I never have, but now I know there's a fix for it.
Yeah, it's a complicated problem, but it can now be solved. Let me see. There are some smaller stuff in there. You can triggering quartz jobs from Actuator now.
Oh, really? Oh, that's a really good one. That's actually quite nice.
Cool.
Yeah,
very good.
That's good. Oh, does JobRunner have something like that? Oh, that's
I bet.
We should talk to them.
We have now a property which you can set, and it writes the current trace ID in a header for your client.
Oh, for the client. Okay. For Spanner or Zipkin style distributed tracing via Micrometer.
That's really neat because when I worked on projects, what we did is usually, if there is an error response, we usually included the trace ID because it makes debugging so much easier. If someone then comes to you, then you just ask them, hey, what's the trace ID of your error? And then you can just look it up in your trace system and get all the logs related to that stuff. That's a cool, very cool feature.
Yeah, that's super good. Wait, so you're saying you do that without Micrometer asking for it?
No, it was Micrometer, but at that time Spring Boot had no property which you can just set. So we wrote a custom filter which just took the current trace ID from at that thing. It wasn't Micrometer tracing. It was like Sleuth, but it was the same idea.
Right,
Take the trace ID, write it in the header, return it to the client, and this is now supported out of the box. Just set a property and you get that.
That's awesome. So this this is all like, there's a lot of like, it keeps the world spinning, right? These kinds of releases. But I expect the biggest bulk of the work this year will be Spring Framework 7 and Spring Boot 4.0.
4. Yeah.
Yeah. New generation, new release.
Right.
What do we know? Jürgen just announced 7.0, like a release, a milestone or whatever.
So one of the big things is the JSpecify nullness stuff. You heard about that already?
I have. They have not. Let's talk about that.
Yep.
That's Sebastian.
Right. Yeah. Sebastian Deleuze is driving that stuff. So Spring Framework 6 has this nullable annotations, which are from the Spring Framework package space. So it's org Spring Framework something. And Spring Framework 7 migrates to the JSpecify annotations. JSpecify is a working group with a lot of companies and people in it, and they are essentially creating a successor of this JSR 3.305, I think it was, like the old nullable annotations. And JSpecify is much more powerful. You can, for example, say, this is a list, but it can have nullable elements in it. Or this is a nullable list, which can have nullable elements in it and stuff like that. So Spring Framework 7 has already migrated to the JSpecify annotations.
Yeah. Wow.
And the cool thing is that they can be checked at compile time. So you essentially hook into a plugin into your compiler, and this checks if all the annotations are in the correct places and if you have put null checks where you call this method in place. So there should be less null pointer exceptions. But of course, now all the portfolio projects have to also migrate to JSpecify so that users get like this whole big picture of everything is annotated at nullable if it can return null. And Spring Boot at the moment has no nullable annotations, so we have to add them.
So okay, you just mentioned there's a lot here. Right now, there's not just org Spring Framework. There's also JetBrains. There's some in the JDK itself. There's
JavaX.
JavaX. There's just a bunch of different @nullable or null safe or whatever. Just a bunch of annotations in that same sphere that are. And as far as I know, there's no relationship to them. They're all just, each company has created these packages, and somehow they're not, it's not a feature of the JDK, right? So there's plugins or associated tools that allow these annotations to be meaningful. And so is the goal here to add yet another set of annotations, or is it to just have a final thing where we can all just agree on this? And use
so that's the competing standards XKCD, where you have like 12 standards, and now let's
now we have
merge them all together. Now we have 13. Yeah, that's essentially what JSpecify is. But I have hope for JSpecify because a lot of big companies are behind that stuff.
JetBrains.
Yeah, JetBrains, for example. I think Google is in there too.
Yeah, and JetBrains is really important because, first of all, Kotlin at the compiler has already supported all these other ones for years, right? So it has null safety as a language feature. But if you're using Java libraries from Kotlin, it has already for years supported the nullability hints specified by these annotations placed in Java code. And so that'll continue to be supported, I gather, in Kotlin. And then also IntelliJ will do the right thing. It'll show you the right semantic, highlighting and so on associated with this JSpecify stuff. That's cool. That's really cool.
That is one of the big features which we want to have in Spring Boot 4.
Yeah. Are we going to ship a plugin for Java, or will we bake it into the Spring Boot plugin, or like where will that
Mm.
validation live? Will we just package one in the parent POM? Like who adds that plugin to
open
validate
to
in Java?
that's open to discussion. We have no plans for that yet. Right now, if you want to compile time null checks, you have to add something which understands JSpecify, and Spring Framework uses it's called nullaway.
No, oh
And
yeah, okay.
nullaway is a plugin into, how's the thingy called? Oh God, I forgot the name. But nullaway is essentially checking the nullness inside one of those frameworks which hook into the compiler.
Okay, interesting. It'd be cool if that was at least pre-configured, kind of like the Git commit
Yeah,
ID
that you just have to hook
Cyclone.
it into.
Yeah.
Yep.
That'd be cool. Okay, well, I mean, there's plenty of time to figure that out. We're talking about November of this year, right? It's only February. Or at least I think it's gonna be November. Are we gonna release 4.0 at the same time as we would have released 3.6 if we were gonna release 3.6? Is that the idea?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
The idea is to release it in November.
Yeah, so it's November. That's a long time away. We got 9 months, basically.
Yeah, and the first milestone should be out in June, if I can count correctly. I think it's June.
Tentative dates here, people. These are not guarantees, okay? Things.
Yeah. I'm bad with dates. There's calendar.spring.io. This is the truth, not the stuff I tell you.
Even that isn't necessarily the truth, because sometimes things slip. Okay, just
of course. Sometimes CI acts up and stuff, or you got like power blackouts, like I did, like 5 minutes
There's
before
always,
this recording.
It's around that time,
Yeah.
But who knows? Maybe it'll get moved ahead. Like we did that with Spring Boot 3.4 last, because of the Thanksgiving thing, right? It got moved up like a week, so you got it a little earlier. We might actually slip in the right, ahead instead of backwards. Okay, good. So Spring Boot, that nullability stuff is going to be quite the operation. We have to, like you said, everything needs to be decorated with these annotations.
It's touching the old code base. Yep. This will be a fun commit, like 500,000 files changed.
Well, I mean, just for Spring? No,
for Spring Boot.
For Spring Boot, yeah. Geez.
Yeah, because we did not have like nullness annotations right now, so we have to add them to the whole code base.
But do we have 500,000 files?
No, I think it's not 500,000 files, but it's a lot of code.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's probably a few thousand classes in Spring Boot, but not 500,000.
No.
What about the
third-party
libraries? Like, what about Hibernate or Netty or whatever, Tomcat?
Yeah, I hope when Spring starts using JSpecify, it has like this, it emanates out of in the other ecosystem, that they start thinking about JSpecify annotations too, because I would love to have like a consistent nullness story in Java, because I think that's one of the big killer features of Kotlin, this nullness baked into the type system. And of course, you can't do this with Java anymore, maybe, but I think there is a JEP even, which
I saw that.
Which tries to work on that. But in the meantime, the annotations are quite cool too.
Yeah, thank goodness for Java giving us the tools with annotation processors to add this, even though the language itself doesn't have it. But you're right. I saw this as there's a separate initiative, and one imagines that these efforts will converge, or at least they can be. We can hide it so that they work similarly. But I saw a great talk by Brian Getz, Java language architect Brian Getz over at Oracle, around Valhalla, the effort to add
the
value types. And in that, he talks about, a knock-on effect of this discussion is, well, okay, if value types allow me to have primitive types in places I couldn't otherwise have them today, then suddenly I can do things like having a list of lowercase int.
Yes, right.
Well, in that case, but lists allow me to have null. So what does that mean? And that gets into a question around nullability specification. And that's a thing that will eventually come out of that Valhalla effort. Is the language might have to grow nullability specifications, but of course, unlike Kotlin, it'll be the other way around. It'll be nullable by default, and you can make it not nullable. To preserve backwards compatibility. But that's super cool. I mean, I can't wait for Valhalla.
That's very cool. Yeah.
I wonder about imagine all the things that, I don't know. This is just for those people listening. This is just me dreaming. I don't know if this is like a thing that we don't know when Valhalla will come out, but let's say it's here in time for Spring Framework 8, like, I don't know. No idea. Nobody's told me anything. I have no idea. I'm just guessing and hoping and praying. But if it comes out in time for Spring Framework 8 in, before, I don't know. I don't know when 8, I know 7's coming out this year, but everything else I can't take for granted. So hopefully before 2030, I don't know. Let's say these things are both here sometime before 2030. Imagine all the types we could turn into value types, like, could bean definitions be turned into value types? Probably not, but like the reflective metadata, maybe. I mean, all that stuff just, this is an example of where if you just keep using Java, the code gets better. It gets more performant and more efficient for free, Compact headers, really cool. That's another feature.
There's a lot of stuff coming.
Yeah,
Brian Götz is crazy. Like every talk I watch from him, it's worth watching.
Yeah. Oh, so good.
It's
so
crazy.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, that's 4.0. 4.0 is coming later this year. It builds the JSpecify stuff. That's starting in Spring Framework. Obviously, Spring Framework will still be using Java 17 as the baseline.
Yes. The baseline haven't been bumped. It's still 17.
I really wish it had. That bums me out.
I bet a lot of users wish that are so grateful that we did not bump it.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah, but also I wish we hadn't. But we are upgrading the baseline for Jakarta EE, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And that's gonna be. I mean, it's gonna be a nice big thing. So the nullability is a big thing. That's the is that one of those things that will be, like, for example, we did reactive in Spring Framework 5, and then we did the GraalVM AOT stuff in Spring Framework 6, and now the nullability stuff in 7. It's one of those things where it's a simple idea that touches every corner of the code across the entire portfolio.
Yeah.
Oh, well, anyway, we have 9 months, no pressure. Just have to
but maybe there are even more great features. I have no idea. I'm not into the Spring Framework roadmap, but like the JSpecify is the one which affects us as the Spring Boot team the most, because we have to add this stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, let me see. I'm looking for Jürgen Holler. Just like in the last month, less than a month, he published the Spring Framework 7.0, the first milestone, right? Basically, where is that blog? Spring Framework 7 milestone or something like that. M1, just January 23. Oh wow, that was a month ago. Okay, it feels like I was expecting the blog to come back like a few weeks ago. Things are moving too quickly. Okay, so we've got JDK 17 to 27 compatibility range. We've got Jakarta EE as the minimum baseline for Jakarta, and that includes Tomcat 11, Hibernate 7, Hibernate ORM 7, Hibernate Validator 9. We got Kotlin 2.x. Yay, GraalVM 23
that was just mentioned in the chat. Yeah, Kotlin 2 baseline.
Yeah, amazing. And an opportunity to ship API removals and deprecations. Yeah, and of course 7.0 will have null safety work, and will retire the org Spring Framework lang annotations in favor of JSpecify. Just this is really good. This is, and this is like the big picture stuff about on which people can start focusing, and then you'll see a lot of little new features. At least that's my expectation, is based on previous releases. There's always the big, here's the first M1 just to get the ball started, the ball rolling,
Right.
Oh, so excited. Okay, well, that's good. All this stuff is like, for example, you just made my day the other day. The Spring AI MCP stuff. I don't know if people have been following this whole thing. Anthropic, they're the makers of Claude, which is an AI model. It's sort of like ChatGPT, or like OpenAI. Anthropic is to Claude.ai as OpenAI is to ChatGPT. Okay,
Right.
and in November, which for those of you who are keeping track is 3 months ago, basically, they announced a new protocol by which you can extend your model, like a plugin model, basically, to teach your LLMs new tricks. And it's called Model Context Protocol. And we, almost in the same breath as that announcement, on the Spring AI team, we had a new project called Spring AI MCP, which provides both support for writing client and services for both reactive and standard servlet stuff. That work was done almost at breakneck speeds, like just incredibly good, robust support added to Spring AI as a separate experimental project back in November. And then I guess we announced it in December. I don't remember. Anyway, very, very quickly, right? And meanwhile, there's that support was a core Java SDK kind of stuff, core Java types that you need for MCP, and then the Spring and Spring Boot style integrations on top of that, right? And eventually, very, very quickly, Anthropic, the company behind this Model Context Protocol initiative, reached out to us. And just last week, I think, we announced that the core abstraction that we developed, the Spring team did, in this experimental Spring AI MCP project, has now been has been donated and made the official Java SDK for MCP. This initiative backed by Anthropic. Cool. And then at the same time, we rebased Spring AI. We integrated those integrations. We pulled those integrations into Spring AI M6, and that in turn rebases on top of the new official SDK artifacts that are in Maven Central. The official Model Context Protocol Maven artifacts. And so Spring AI M6 has this now. It's no longer the experimental Spring AI MCP experimental project. It's now Spring AI and the official Anthropic Model Context Protocol Java SDK library. All this happened in the last 3 months. There was nothing, none of this code existed in November 1st, right? All of this happened just like that. And of course, this, huge kudos to the Spring AI team and to Anthropic for like moving quickly and doing amazing things with care and precision and thoughtfulness, at speed with alacrity. Huge kudos. I couldn't be more just astonished. And it's really cool. This MCP stuff is really cool because for people who haven't seen it, it's for me, it's like AI-centric microservices. I don't want to jinx it by giving it a buzzword, but basically, what's the hardest part about microservices, right? It's not writing them, it's integrating them, it's pulling them together to get the aggregate. Well, now you've got the LLM model doing that for you. It speaks, so the integration language is just English or French or German or whatever. It's the language you as a person speak, and you can tell your model to defer to these plugins and ask these plugins questions. And so it's like the best of all worlds. You can write little granular services that give your model new data, fresh data on whatever. Like imagine you write an MCP plugin and say, okay, hey ChatGPT or hey Claude, I'd like to make a quiche Lorraine. Please buy the things that I need to do this from Amazon, fresh, the grocery, and then ship the ingredients I need to me, right? Well, if I build an MCP plugin for Amazon's API or whatever, it can do that for me now. It can actually execute on my behalf. Like what? The AI, the interface, and there's no web app here. It's just a chatbot, and you can use voice for these chatbots too, and it'll know to use the right MCP plugin. So like all that came together, and like in the same minute as all that stuff landed in Spring AI, you had already gotten it so that you could go to start.spring.io on the Initializr and build this stuff. And like I said, there's many different configurations. There's client, there's server, there's reactive and servlet.
Yeah, there's some logic behind that.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, it's great, right? Welcome. Like that release is we didn't give you. There wasn't much time to give you forward warning because, as you can see, it's just everything was moving so quickly. and you were just so great about it. You're always great about it. What's the, like, how do you, you working on the Spring Initializr? It's for people who don't know, the Spring Initializr is actually an open source library.
Yeah.
You know, what do you, besides getting these like hair on fire requests from the community and people like us on the Spring team saying, hey, please help, we need new things added to, like, what's the, how do you drive features forward? What's the roadmap on that kind of stuff look like?
So so I'm the team lead of start.spring.io and Initializr. And like you said, Initializr is the library behind start.spring.io. So if you go to start.spring.io, that's essentially our customized version of the Spring Initializr with all the dependencies and stuff in it. And for the Spring MCP part, it's what it gives you in the dependency selection. There is MCP client and MCP server in there. And depending if you select like WebMVC or WebFlux, you get other dependencies in your Maven or Gradle build file. And that's possible because Initializr has like a really cool plugin concept, which is actually based on Spring configuration classes. So every time you generate a project, it bootstraps a small Spring application context behind the scenes to generate your project, and then it tears it all down and gives you the zip file to download. That's what's happening behind the scenes, and which is very cool because you can now use the powers of conditions and stuff to customize the project generation. And that's essentially what's happening with MCP. If you select MCP, a configuration class is essentially instantiated because you just selected MCP, and then there's a condition on it. Yeah.
You're saying you can do like conditional on reactive, and then generate the Maven artifact or Gradle artifact based on that?
Yeah, that's how it's working. Yeah.
What?
And if you select MCP, a configuration class is loaded because you just selected the MCP client, and then there is a condition. If you use WebMVC, you get this dependency. If you use WebFlux, you get the other one.
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's really cool.
What? I didn't realize it was that amazing.
Yeah, and that's why it's so easy to add new dependencies. It's not that I have to write horrendous amounts of code. You just need to know the plug points where you can put that stuff in, and then it's like easy going.
Auto config and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think the commit which adds the MCP stuff and this additional logic, it's, I don't know, it's like 50 lines of code or so. It's not that much. Like the most difficult stuff is always to figure out when to use which artifact. That's the most difficult part. But if you got that figured out, it's easy. I mean, it was the same for Spring gRPC. The Spring gRPC thingy, which is an experimental project. The dependency to get in there, it's not that hard, but the build file configuration, you need that this gRPC stuff is triggered because it needs another compilation run in the background. You need to compile your proto files to gRPC interfaces and proto buff classes. Right. This is the most complicated stuff. So this is where I spent the most of the time, just prototyping how to best integrate that into Maven and Gradle. And once I got that, I wrote code which essentially modifies the build file.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and in Spring Initializr, it has a whole code generation engine in there. So it can write code for you. For example, if you select like Postgres and test containers, it generates a test which uses this Postgres test container. And
is that refactored to use the Spring Framework 6.0 AOT stuff?
No, it's I think so. Stefan built both of those features, I think. And he used the knowledge he got from Initializr to influence the AOT stuff. That's at least what I think. I haven't asked him, but I guess that's
I can imagine, yeah. Do they both use Java Poet?
Yes, I think. Yeah, so it's Java Poet. It's Java if Java Poet is used. I think there is Java Poet.
It is for the AOT stuff.
It's absolutely for the AOT stuff. Yeah.
I love that. So and by the way, for people who are wondering, yes, it's an open source library. So you can go get github.com Spring IO.
I think it's in Spring IO. Oh, let me check. So this
and then you have start.spring.io and then Spring Initializr.
Yeah, it's Spring IO.
Initializr.
Yeah. Right.
So spring-io/initializr, and then spring-io/start.spring.io.
Right.
And
you can use the initializer to create your own start.spring.io if you want.
right. But start.spring.io is our implementation of Initializr configured.
Plus the UI.
Yeah, it's the UI plus we fill out the property files for the auto config enabled by the library from Initializr.
Yeah, right. There's a crazy big YAML file in start.spring.io which contains all the dependencies.
Yeah, and you can fork that and just comment out the stuff you don't want or add the stuff you do want, and then you as an organization, you can have start.yourorganization.io or .com or whatever, and you can maybe you've got a contract with Microsoft Azure, so you don't really want Google Cloud or AWS or Alibaba. Fine, just comment out that stuff, and then just make sure you rebase whenever we update ours, so that developers aren't stuck on Java 2.
Yeah, if you're working in a big company, for example, in the developer experience team, you could create your own initializer with your own website, and every time a project is generated, you automatically include like the libraries you always include in all your projects, and then it gets generated off the box.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's amazing. Okay, well, all this stuff is really good. I wanted people to know just what a legend you are for doing all this stuff on start.spring.io. That thing is used by like everybody. People don't realize this. It's not just that people go there via the browser and generate new projects like I do in my talks all the time. I think, in fact, it's quite the opposite. I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the majority of our generations actually happen from within the IDE, which is also served by start.spring.io. It's a web service.
Right. Yeah. Most people don't realize this. If you open IntelliJ, create a new project, and click the Spring project button, this is powered by start.spring.io. It creates this project via start.spring.io. Yeah.
The web API, like a RESTful-ish API.
Yeah, the REST API behind that. Yeah. Yeah, we generate a lot of projects per month, and like a lot of them are created in the browser, but a lot of them are also created via IDEs.
And my favorite thing is that you can do curl start.spring.io, and you get this ASCII art output. You can see the results. It's so good.
Yeah.
All this is stuff. All that's really good. I really appreciate you. I just wanted you to know I can't believe all the stuff you're working on, and then you took the time to hang out with us and answer questions, and I appreciate it. Really, really do.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So as we wind down, the usual questions. Are you on the internet? Do you want to be found? And if so, where do people find you?
Yes, so you can either find me on Blue Sky. If you just type Moritz Halbritter in the search box, it should pop up. My handle is 0.5ritter.de.
Yes.
I'm also on LinkedIn, and I'm on GitHub, Halbritter. I'm also on X, but please don't follow me on X because I don't use that account anymore for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And
let's see.
I'm on Mastodon too. Just search for Moritz Halbritter and you'll find me.
You're very online. There you go. There's Blue Sky.
I'm very online.
And then all the other ones is just much easier to find. So
you can also check my homepage. Let me quickly put that in the chat, which is mhalbritter.github.io, and there are all the. I have to. Let me put it in the private chat, and you can forward it in the real chat. And there are all the socials on it. All the talks I've given, all the other stuff I did. Are you still there, Josh? Ha, now it's my channel. Oh, he's back.
What happened? What was that? That was.
I overtook your channel. It's now mine.
You have it. It's I did a good job. Okay, so what I did was I pressed Command backspace, which in the text editor just means go all the way to the very beginning of the buffer.
Oh yeah.
But in the browser, Google Chrome, it also means go to the last page.
Yeah, that's.
I navigated backwards, which is awkward. Okay, so I'm going to hit enter.
Yep.
There. Gee whiz. Okay.
Right.
That's all I was trying to do is to paste that URL. Okay. Moritz, thank you, my friend. Have a wonderful day. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Yep. Have a good night.
You too.
And
bye, everybody.
I hope we see us in Barcelona.
Yes.
Yep. Cool. Well
Let's
done.
go.
See you. Bye.
Bye.